Well, good afternoon, and thank you for agreeing to sort of, put yourself on the therapist's couch here as to sort of what it is that makes you tick and makes you what you are today. I'm not sure 15 or 20 minutes is really enough, to be honest. But look, I'd love just to hear, just in brief from each of you, a little bit about how you feel you got going, how you felt compelled to be your own boss. Let's start with you, Brett.
It was probably from, childhood. Both my parents ran their own business, so that's probably where it started. And then it was at university when I was thinking I would like to do something on my own or start my own business one day. So it started there, I think. I wasn't ready. I know, Sarah, you were. I was definitely not ready straight after university to run my own business. And if I had, I would have failed probably numerous times. But I tried in the roles that I took on after university to try and do entrepreneurial things within those businesses until I felt that I was ready to go out and do my own thing. But I think, in answer to the question, probably from my parents originally.
How about you, Ed?
I've discovered it along the way. I joined the Navy when I was 17 and a half, went straight down to Naval College. I'd got a place at university, entered a business competition more because I wanted to win the prize to get sent to San Francisco for a week and actually set up a business. But got to this conference, found myself with about 2,000 young entrepreneurs around the world. And it was one of those moments when things sort of shuddered and life wasn't quite the same again. I was so inspired and had no exposure to building a business, but came back and set up a small publishing business, which I sold before I graduated, but then had to go back into the Navy. I had a return of service and then spent 8 years in the Foreign Office. And it took through till 2000, so 8 years after I graduated, when I teamed up with a guy who I'd sold the business to at uni, and that was the start of the journey that was to become figleaves.com. And it's really that journey that's got me to a place now where I really wouldn't do anything else.
And Sara, how about you? Was it from being a small child?
Slightly. I mean, I was kind of nicknamed the World Bank when I was a kid because I always had something going on. I slightly blame my mother because she always said, start your own business because then you'll have time for your children. And that's because she never had a business, obviously. But when I really got going was in the first company I went into management consulting, and I thought I'd learn about business. I learned a lot about spreadsheets, and so I thought I was quite lazy, and I thought I could write some software that would allow me to do this instead of doing spreadsheets, and tried to sell that idea to my boss, who thought it was a bad idea because he wanted to sell me out on day rate doing spreadsheets. So we parted company, and that was it.
But did it feel like a real challenge, or was it a very natural feeling to go into a business on your own? I suppose what I'm asking is, was it scary, Sarah?
Well, I was too young to be scared, I think. I did think about it and thought, well, I either do it now before I've got mortgage and kids, or I wait until after mortgage and kids, in which case I'll be way too old. Obviously, I hadn't met Lord Young at that point. Way too old to do anything later in life, so I had nothing to lose, really.
And do you think, Ed, that it is that kind of devil-may-care attitude that an entrepreneur needs, for saying, I'm just going to go for it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Quill is the first business I've built where it's literally been me in a room and a blank sheet of paper, and I took on the risk and funded the business from scratch. And definitely there'll be moments when you're staring over the precipice of cash running out in 12 days' time, and you've got all these people around you, you've taken them out of good jobs, and it's hard not to be stressed by that. But I think that's part of I think that just goes with the territory.
Do you feel that when you were employed by the Navy and in the diplomatic service that you were entrepreneurial in those jobs? Yeah,
I was always a bit of a maverick, and I was never going to survive long in that line of work. And actually the specific things I did were unusual for that career path. So, I think the university setting up a business experience sowed a seed which I think brought out something I hadn't recognised before, and it never really went away. And I say then starting Fig Leaves was the process of really bringing that out.
So Fig Leaves, for those of you who don't know, is underwear and bikinis, right?
Started off with underwear, bikinis, and then moved into sportswear, hosiery, and now sells pretty much, it was acquired by N. Brown, the catalogue retailers.
And that was the idea you had as a young man at university?
No, it wasn't, sadly, no. The chairman, Daniel Nabarro, was the visionary behind that idea.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I was just hoping for an embarrassing story, but no.
I could give you some embarrassing stories, that's just not one of them.
So, Brett, what do you think it is about people who become entrepreneurs? Is there a sort of a characteristic that you could recognise in a stranger?
I think it's hard work. I mean, going back to what Sarah said, for me, at the time, I had nothing to lose when I launched Streetcar 10 years ago. I mean, I was 27, 28, no kids, no girlfriend, which was quite important at the time actually, because it wouldn't have lasted if I had. But I didn't have any responsibility, so I had quite a few friends that were married with kids, and they said, oh, that's so brave, stepping out of a corporate job to go and start your own thing. But it didn't feel like that at all, because I had a bit of money to lose, not a lot, and I had a bit of time to lose, but I felt that I'd learned so much on the journey, whether it sort of worked or it didn't work, that it just made sense.
But what was it about Streetcar as an idea that made you think this is what I want to do?
We went through quite a structured process, myself and Andrew, my business partner, in that we decided we wanted to do something. That was our starting point. We were friends from university, and that's when we had our first conversation about it. And we used to meet 3 evenings a week after work, and then every weekend day, just to discuss business ideas. We happened across an article about car sharing happening in America and in Europe, and we just thought, wow, that's a great idea. We did all the things you've got to do in terms of writing a business plan, doing market research, etc., etc. The turning point for me in terms of launch was I'd convinced myself that the concept would work and the concept would be big. And we might go and totally cock it up, and with the two of us it was highly likely we were going to, but I would be pretty annoyed if I was still in my corporate job in 3 or 4 years' time and someone else had made this thing work. So that for me, I think I just had a knee operation, and it was my 10 days at home, recovering from my knee operation, where I decided, right, the concept's going to work, let's go and do this. And that's when we both resigned, and then 3 months later launched the service.
So almost a sort of a compulsion to have a go.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, hearing you talk, Brett, about the fact you went through quite a precise, structured approach to it. And there has been some discussion, I think, about the difference between US and UK entrepreneurs today. We're saying that US entrepreneurs are much more likely to just have a bit of a go, whether they think it's going to work or whether they've got a business plan or not. And it's that ability to just go for it. Sara, do you think in your experience that the Brits have been maybe a little bit too careful in their entrepreneurialism? Or do you not think that was you at all?
I don't think that's at all. I think Britain is in the top 10 countries in the world for startups. We have a lot of entrepreneurs here. So I think we're out there and we're doing it, and we always have been. And if you read the stories of the great entrepreneurs of our time, from all over the world, they're all the same. They all started with no idea at all, or they had an idea and they set off down a track like I did. And in fact, Confused was probably the only idea that ever actually stuck to the original idea. Mostly you start a business and off you set down this path, and then another opportunity comes up and you sort of wind the business over to that opportunity, and it's that flexibility that makes you successful.
And what was the thinking behind Quill?
Well, actually, it came out of the Figleys experience. I also don't agree with the US-UK divide on
No, that's fair enough.
Well,
I was chuck that one out there.
Yeah. We use technology and the web to differentiate ourselves from the high street by offering the largest selection of products. Because it was physically impossible at that stage for department stores to use the floor space, as we were able to use the online space. The problem was that the more products and so on you throw up on a website, actually the more confused customers get, and at a certain point they just stop buying anything because they get overwhelmed. It's called the paradox of choice. And what they were missing was content, the equivalent of the John Lewis shop assistant to explain the benefits of this product versus that product. And this is nothing new for the offline world. The offline world has known it for ages, but the online world is now catching up, and that's a dynamic that we thought was going to play out in 2009, and that really was the genesis of Quill, which is how do we help businesses who are trying to sell products and services online become better publishers, because that drives more engagement and drives more revenue.
Now, two of you on the panel have started more than one business, and we've again referred quite a lot today to serial entrepreneurs. How does it feel doing it for the second time, Brett?
As Ed said earlier, you have your moments, that's for sure. But for me, I was ready to start all over again. I actually missed that. I don't know, the risk, the fact that you don't know what you're doing every day, the fact that you can make decisions very quickly still, those sorts of things that I think Streetcar grew to a reasonable size. It wasn't a big business, but it grew to a reasonable size. And I missed that challenge of doing something different every day, being able to make quick decisions, and that growth, that challenge for growth. And that was the rationale behind going back to the beginning.
Why did you sell?
It just felt right at the time. We had a few approaches. So our first approach was about when we were 6 months old, and it was a big global organisation that basically came to us and said, right, guys, will you sell to us? We could probably pay off some of your mortgage. If you don't sell to us, we'll come in and take you on and crush you. And so we had that conversation, and that was and that was quite scary actually at the time, because we were tiny. We had 8 cars I think at the time. We literally just launched, and so that was quite a heavy discussion between the two of us of, do we do this or do we actually sell up? So that I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad we took the decision that we did and just thought, we've come so far, let's just do this and let's take them on. And if they want to take us on, then great, and we'll focus on service and all the stuff that they're probably poor at. And we had a few other approaches over the years, and it just felt the right time to us to sell, both as a business but also personally. I think I was probably ready to start again.
Knackered.
Well, no, because it's then back to 24/7. It was probably far easier.
Did you take a break though?
No, I did part-time in Zipcar. I did part-time and then focused on the new business for the rest of the week. So I did sort of 3 days Zipcar, 4 days new business. So no, I didn't take a break. The plan was to take a break. It didn't quite
What was the timetable for you, Sarah, between Confused.com and Buddi?
Well, I've retired, so I thought I'll spend some time doing whatever people do when they've retired and get to know my daughter. But very quickly, my daughter didn't want to know me. So I started twiddling my thumbs, and it ended up being about 9 months, so not very long.
And you started then questing around for another idea, or did something?
Well, I've always got lots of ideas. In fact, part of the reason I fly helicopters is because my CTO said to me, Sarah, stop coming back with new ideas and go off and do something that takes you, uses your brain space. And flying a helicopter is the hardest thing I've ever learned to do, and I really have to think about flying when I'm flying, so I can't have new ideas. But actually, Buddi's the first company that I've built where it allows me to have the ideas and build effectively new businesses with inside the organisation. So we've been doing that since the beginning. In fact, one of them I couldn't convince the investors was a good idea, so I had to do it separately, but we ended up buying it in November last year anyway.
I mean, what sacrifices do you think you've had to make in order to be your own boss?
I mean, right now we're sort of 3 years into Quill. I'm probably working 70 to 80 hours a week still. So I haven't had a holiday where I haven't had to work almost every day, even if it's for an hour or two, since I started. And so there is a big sacrifice, and so that impacts family, it impacts a sort of a social life. The benefit is, to some extent, you can at least try to structure your time. So I've also got two little kids, and I will try to walk out of the office at 6 to 6:30 to go and see my 2 kids, put them to bed, read them a story, but I'll be working again at 8 o'clock. So I've got some flexibility on structuring. So there's definitely a personal sacrifice, but and that's why this can't be a job. You do this because you love doing it. Otherwise, you throw the towel in.
How about you two? I mean, do you think that the sacrifice you've made have been worth it?
From my side, absolutely. I mean, I think, as Ed says, you sacrifice time outside of work, and that's friendships, that's relationships. I mean, I started seeing someone early days of Streetcar and went on a date, and I had my laptop on the table making bookings on the phone at the same time, and it didn't last long.
I was going to say. Well, she's a lucky lady.
She's not my wife, no, that's for sure. So you do, that's just the nature of it. But no, I wouldn't change it for the world. I didn't see my friends as much as I wanted to, but they'll stick with you, family stick with you through it all. So no, I wouldn't change it. And I've got a lovely wife now who's not that person, so I'm happy.
I'd say you don't really have any choice. You've got to do it. You're just driven to do it. And I feel very guilty that I didn't spend more time with my daughter when she was little. But recently she's now studying in New York, and she said, "Mummy, I'm so glad you worked really hard so I can live like this." And fair enough.
Pragmatic, but honest, right? Really, really honest. Well, listen, that does almost wind up this session. We've got about a minute left. If anybody's got any questions they'd specifically like to throw to our panel here, do feel free.
I've got one point to get off my chest from today.
Oh, go on then.
So one of the things that has been this topic of the, where's the £1 billion exit going to come from? And it's sort of it's now seems to have morphed into a thought that there have been no or little £1 billion exits in Europe. If you actually look at the data for the last 10 years, in the US between 2003 and 2013, there have been £39 billion plus exits. 39. How many do you think have been in Europe in more or less the same time frame? just be interested to hear some numbers.
Anyone? 12, says Perry.
30.
Really?
So the number is not that dissimilar. And more than that, of the 30, 11 of them have been out of the UK. So before we sort of all talk ourselves into this, again, mindset of the UK is underperforming and we're not doing very well versus the Americans, we've delivered 11 digital tech exits of north of £1 billion in the last decade. And actually, if you look at the companies coming through the system right now, I think we should beat that in the next 5 years. So I just wanted to put that out there, because otherwise we end up sort of buying into a myth. The data is talking a very different story.
Well, Ed, thank you for that, which is, perfect timing. It started as flashing zero,
Sorry.
just as you came to an end there. So, well, thank you. It was really interesting to hear your insights and hear your stories. Ladies and gentlemen, our entrepreneurs.